Morning, everyone. Thank you for joining our live stream this morning. My name is Hannah Bleem from the Williamson County Emergency Management Agency. We have several leaders here this morning and professionals from across the county to bring you a weather update this morning. And we hope you're home and enjoying the blistery weather. So I'm going to quickly introduce everybody that's going to be on the live stream. So we have Deanna Lambert from the city of Brentwood, Steve Grubb from the city of Franklin, Todd Hoppenstead from Brentwood Public Works, Larry Rose from Middle Tennessee Electric, and Chief Brian Goss from the Brentwood Fire Rescue. So we're going to have Chief speak right now on what the current conditions look like there in Brentwood and then across the whole county, because we heard he drove across several jurisdictions this morning, and maybe some tips for our residents.
Sure. Coming from Arrington this morning through parts of the county, Nolensville, and then into Brentwood is pretty much as predicted. The roads that were plowed last night or yesterday glazed over this morning, and a lot of them, even the main roads like Nolensville Road and parts of Sunset Road, are just solid glare ice. So it is as predicted. Fortunately, on my 30-minute commute in, I encountered 5 cars in a snowplow. So the majority of our residents, it appears, are staying off the streets. Maryland Farms this morning is like a ghost town, even more so than it was in the height of COVID last year. So people are heeding the warnings and they're staying off the streets, which I think is a tremendous help, because if you have a slide off, not only are you yourself in danger, but now you're impeding the flow of emergency traffic as well. So just encourage people to enjoy this sunny but extremely cold Friday and have an extended weekend in your homes.
Oh, you are muted, Deanna. So sorry.
Sorry about that. And while we are talking about Brentwood, we do want to mention that the John P. Holt Brentwood Library is closed today, as well as all of the parks in the city of Brentwood. So like Chief Goss was saying, this is just a perfect day to sit home, work from home if you can, read a book that you already have at home. Just stay off the roads as our crews continue to work and clear these roads. We're looking live right here at Franklin Road at Murray Lane going north into the city of Brentwood. And you can see that the public work crews there yesterday completely spent all day treating these roads. But as you can see, still covered with that layer of ice that still, formed overnight.
Yeah. And I've been watching Dan for a couple of days on WSMV, and he's absolutely correct with the fact that we're not going to get much melting today. Even with the sun, some of those areas that were plowed may be impacted. We're not supposed to get above about 25 today. So even though it may look a little safer out today, it's really not. And we're probably not going to get any significant melting until later in the weekend. So please just stay in if you can, stay off the roads. And those of us who have to be out there, especially my emergency crews and those across the county, give them as much room as you possibly can.
Exactly. And before we move on to public works, both in Brentwood and Franklin, Chief Goss, you gave some great advice yesterday while we were on yesterday, talking about what you can do, what people at home can do to make sure that first responders can get to them and not kind of impede the response time. So please explain what people can do to help you guys out.
Yeah, a couple of things that we mentioned, other than, safe operating of heating devices to keep yourself safe in your home, is if you have house numbers on your mailboxes or even on your house itself, keep those clear so we can see you. It gets very difficult to locate addresses in the midst of a snow event like we've had, especially in some entire subdivisions have their house numbers marked on the curb, there's not much you can do with that, to be honest, and it's virtually impossible. That's why numbers on the homes are so incredibly important. And also something I didn't mention yesterday, but probably should have, was if you have a hydrant in front of your house, brush that off as well. We're not asking you to shovel a path to it and everything, but most hydrants are either a bright color, yellow or red, but when they're just a hump in the snow, it makes it difficult for us to locate them. So if you have a hydrant in front of your house, we just ask that you take a few minutes and brush that off as well so we can locate it if necessary.
Indeed. And great advice there, Chief. We appreciate all of those tips for sure. Thank you for being with us. We'll see if we can come back to you here in a little while. We do have a lot of people here this morning, about 122 watching live on the EMA's Facebook page here. And so we want to take your questions. This is for you. If you have any questions, Jeffy has asked us about any concerns about melting and just refreezing today. Yes, I think that is definitely a concern. Temperatures are below freezing right now, but I do believe, I'm not a weather forecaster, but I've been watching the forecast, and I do believe that some of the temperatures may get above freezing later today and then definitely tomorrow. So these roads are definitely going to be an issue, not only today, but going into the weekend as well. And so we have Todd Hoppenstead with Brentwood Public Works here right now. And Todd, do you mind explaining kind of what you guys have been doing this morning and what you will continue to do throughout the day?
I sure can, Deanna. Just to clarify, you may see other forecasts. I know they vary, but they tend to be pretty similar. I'm seeing a high of 24 degrees today. So still quite a bit below freezing, well enough above the 15-degree threshold where salt is usually effective. So we've got our trucks out this morning, have been since about 6 a.m., putting salt back down on those main roads. You had a shot there of Franklin Road at Murray Lane a minute ago. And there's one of Wilson Pike at Church Street. And you can see those roads have been scraped. They were salted yesterday. A lot of it refroze, like the chief mentioned. They're a bit icy this morning, but I think they will rapidly improve with the sunshine there, and the little bit of traffic that's on them will help that salt to become effective as the temperatures continue to climb. But yes, definitely around 4 o'clock and beyond, we're going to start to see the temperatures come back down. We cannot continue to throw salt, all day and all night if it's going to lose its effectiveness. It's just too costly and wasteful, and has some negative impacts on the environment as well. So we try to be sensitive to all of that, and we will do our best to get these scraped clear, and maybe some of them will dry out. I do expect, and I saw this morning in my assessment throughout the city, we've got some areas of pavement that are dry, but that's not the norm. And even these videos at the traffic signals can be a little bit deceiving, because to the brave, that might look like a road that you're willing to try. Keep in mind, all our side streets are virtually untouched. Many of them are just packed down from a little bit of traffic yesterday. Our terrain is such that you might get going, but you're probably not going to stop, and people are having trouble turning. Still a lot of cars in ditches throughout town, and semi trucks stuck there on Church Street, just where they got stuck yesterday, and they're not moving. Our police department was seeing over an hour for wreckers to show up and remove vehicles, and those were the ones that were impacting travel. Those that are off the road, I don't even think have been called in on yet. That's just how busy everybody remained.
Wow. And you were mentioning that the ice is causing some issues with the traffic lights this morning. And so this is an example right here at Church Street and Wilson Pike, where those lines for the traffic signals are buried underneath, in the road. Can you explain kind of what you guys are seeing, not only in Brentwood, but probably around the county? And there's one of the crews right there in action. Woo! Look at that.
Yeah, there you can see that was not staged, I promise. And it just kind of gave my heart skip a beat, because that can be a very frightening feeling when you're in those trucks. They're high center of gravity, a lot of weight in the back. And when you start to slide, especially at the back end of the truck like that, it often feels like you might tip over. That's generally not the case, but it feels that way. And it's hard to overcome that feeling that you get. So I've had that white knuckled moment many a times myself. And yeah, I bet he's taking a breath right now as he goes back up the hill there on Church Street. To your earlier question, yeah, I made some observations this morning when I was out assessing the roads, and I just want to call to attention. One, many of the side streets where you come to a traffic signal, we have 53 of them throughout Brentwood. Those signals might appear to be not functioning correctly. They are, in fact, functioning. The issue is, like Deanna alluded to, some of those signals have wires buried in the pavement that are the detection zone. They're kind of like metal detectors. And others use a traffic camera up above, and there's a detection zone, an invisible detection zone set up and programmed into that camera. Well, as vehicles are approaching the intersections, especially on those side streets, you can't see the pavement markings that are still covered in snow, especially the stop bar, and those vehicles aren't stopping necessarily in the right place. It's nobody's fault. It's just not triggering that light to change from red to green. So one of the observations I made this morning was cars that are pulling out on a red. Thankfully, traffic volumes are very light, but there's always a risk of doing that. When you get impatient and you think the light's not functioning properly, or you didn't want to come to a complete stop because you just don't want to risk getting stuck, you're pulling out on a red light, crossing traffic that has the right of way. We've all done it. You look and you think you've looked and assessed it well, but something was in your blind spot. That's where it really becomes challenging and risky. So that's a concern for me today as well.
Okay, and if you do come to an intersection and the traffic lights are not working properly, I'm sure we don't have a representative from police here this morning, but I'm sure that the advice is to do the safest thing. If you can come to a complete stop, obviously treat it like a flashing caution, yellow light, but obviously you want to make the safest decision possible when you have icy conditions like we do out this morning. This is a live look this morning from Concord Road at Wilson Pike westbound. And this is a great example of, public works, of their efforts, coming to fruition. This definitely looks passable. But again, like Todd was saying, this is a main route right here. Some of those secondary routes you guys are still working on this morning.
That's right. And those side streets, as the main routes are cleared, you push that windrow of snow off to the curb on either side of the street. There's just no other way to avoid that. We get that call often, you're burying my driveway. It's not intentional. There's just really no other way to do it. That's how it's done throughout the country and the world. But it puts that windrow or that speed bump of snow at your driveway or at those side streets, and that has frozen overnight. So that's going to become a challenge as well, as people think they've got enough space, gap in traffic to get out onto the main road, and they go for it. They might get hung up, or they might spin their wheels a bit, and then they're partially in traffic and partially not. So another thing to be careful of. I would always advise, Deanna, if the traffic signal's not working properly, you can turn right on red legally and safely in most places. That's what I would encourage. Even if you need to go left, turn right, go down a little ways, turn around somewhere where it's safe to do so. I would avoid turning left on a red light.
All right. Great advice, Todd. We appreciate everything you and your crews have been doing for sure. We know you guys have been working overtime over the past 24, 36, 48 hours preparing for this event. So again, the advice to everyone at home, please stay home off the roads to allow the crews to work and to continue to clear those. So thank you for being with us. Please hang on. We may come back to you if we have an opportunity. We have about 175 people watching here live on the EMA's page. So let's send it over to Franklin next, Hannah.
All right. So what are we seeing in the city of Franklin today? Are you guys having any specific issues or tips for people as they try to navigate the roads if they're having to go out?
Well, first and foremost, let me just say I've really enjoyed all these pictures from Montana this morning. Oh, I'm sorry, Franklin. Yeah, we appreciate the opportunity to jump in and participate in this Facebook Live this morning. So we enjoyed really good success going into the 7 o'clock hour yesterday with getting some asphalt showing really good throughout our major arterials. I will say about that 7 o'clock hour, we actually had another squall move in and covered up our streets pretty quickly. So we had teams reporting throughout the night trying to clean up some of those major arterials. And as you can see in this particular picture, we've got a lot of asphalt showing. But again, that doesn't mean that it's safe to operate on those roadways. Clearly, as the colleagues before me have indicated, even with the heavy snow melt, the slushy areas, you've got to be very, very careful when you're moving through those intersections, because one slight move, as we saw with the Brentwood truck earlier, and you're going to do a 360 in the intersection. So we'd encourage folks to just continue to use extreme caution as they move throughout both Brentwood, the city of Franklin, and Williamson County.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that update. I know a lot of our public works crews are all kind of encountering the same thing. I know we all live in different jurisdictions. So the types of, things that we might encounter may be a little different. Maybe the snow levels on the roads are a little different. But at the end of the day, public works crews across the county are working really hard. It looks like we have a question from a viewer. Is Holly Tree Gap passable? Do either of you have that info?
Yes, it's been cleared. It was cleared last night. I drove it late last night. It was treacherous, but it's passable. It's been treated again this morning, but very treacherous. There's a car in the ditch, or at least there was late last night, at the top of the hill there. A lot of people don't know that's partially county, partially city. We try to treat it all so that the county doesn't have to make a trip to that location, but it was blowing over the road there by the Menifee farm last night. So, when that happens, we've salted and the road starts to get wet. It actually acts as a magnet for that blowing snow, and it attracts more snow. Sometimes it's better when the pavement stays dry, because you'll see the snow just blow completely across the pavement. But whether it's vehicle traffic that makes it wet, or salt or whatever that makes it wet, then it acts as a magnet. So can't promise that it's the safest, but it is passable.
Awesome. And looks like Christine is asking what's going on in Spring Hill. So we'll just kind of reiterate on this live that major roadways are likely going to be rather clear. Because they've been driven on multiple times. But when it comes to those back roads across the county, we wouldn't be able to tell you exactly what parts of it will be passable or not at this point. Time will tell. Obviously, with a little bit of sun and heat, that'll help the roads. So if you're anywhere else across the county, Fairview, Thompson Station, Spring Hill, just use extreme caution if you're going to choose to go out, and just assume that if you're not on a major roadway, it's likely going to be a little icy. So with that information, just make good decisions for yourself and your family. If you live near major roadways, you may be able to get out today. We wouldn't recommend it at this point, just because, again, give it another 24, 48 hours. We'll be seeing different conditions across the county. And if it can wait, whatever your task that you're trying to complete is, it can probably wait. Unless you're one of the individuals that just has to be on the roadway today.
Indeed. Great advice. And I wanted to go back to Steve Grubb here. I was filtering through the City of Franklin traffic cameras, which are a great resource. So thank you so much for providing those. Y'all have dozens of cameras across the entire city of Franklin. But Ned Dannenberg, my friend Ned, and I caught the same thing. This particular camera says heater on. Steve, tell us what that means. Do you guys have heaters on the road there?
No, so actually the heater are on the camera lenses and or the shield around it. So that way we have a very clear picture of the roadway system. So not all of our cameras obviously are equipped with those, but yeah, I understand the roadway looks like it could possibly have a heater on it, but no, absolutely not.
Yeah, that's good to know. I know one of our Brentwood cameras yesterday was all iced over. So thank you for educating us on that. I completely understand now what you're talking about. So lots of great information here. Jeffy's mentioning that it's good to know that passable isn't always normal driving conditions. And our friend here, Nelson Andrews, who's one of our Brentwood City Commissioners, he has a lot of insight into vehicles and cars. And he says passable also depends on the capability of your vehicle and the tread depth of your tire. This is a great reminder at this point to make sure you have excellent tread on your tires. I know that you're supposed to check those often, but Steve, if you want to elaborate a little bit on how important that tread is on your vehicle as well.
So I'll be more than happy to talk about that, but clearly whenever you get into slushy, wet conditions, yeah, the tread depth is essential to make sure you don't ultimately just move into a skid. So keep an eye on those tread depths for sure.
Yes, thank you. And I did want to remind some folks, yesterday our county offices were closed. They are also closed again today. Before we move on to our Middle Tennessee Electric friends, our county offices are closed. That does include the health department. So there are no vaccinations or testing available today. Those that had appointments or getting a cancellation notice, they're going to be rescheduled. So we just wanted to remind everybody of that. That does include the libraries as well. I know Jeffy from the library system is here today. So with that being said, we're going to move on to Middle Tennessee Electric. Yesterday, we were able to talk to Amy, and today we have Larry Rose from Middle Tennessee Electric. So Larry, you told us a little earlier that there's not much going on, which is good news, right? Knock on wood.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, thank goodness. Yeah, you guys are hard at work all the time, regardless whether it's snow, rain, storms, anything. I mean, you guys encounter everything. So what do you guys have going on today? And do you have any tips for folks as they are kind of stuck in their houses? What should they be doing today?
Yeah, I may have jinxed us this morning before I came on. I'm showing 7 accounts are out of the nearly 95,000 that we have in Williamson County. I just checked with our control center, and that's unrelated to the weather. It's a bad transformer, and crews are on site right now. So that should be remedied within, the next 20 to 30 minutes. If you can be lucky with a snowfall, from our perspective, we were lucky in that it was a dry snow and not the typical wet, heavy snow that we get here. So we really didn't have an issue with snow freezing overnight on our lines or on the trees to fall across the lines. So again, it's from a electrical grid perspective, it was a lucky night for us. As far as some of the tips and things, I thought it might be interesting to talk about some of the myths that people sitting at home might be thinking, like, can I lower my bill by using space heaters as opposed to your HVAC system? The simple answer is not really. They're not very efficient. So a typical space heater, if you use that 12 hours a day, could add as much as $50 a month to your bill. So they're okay for a small amount of time, but you might not want to try to do that for a long period of time. Same thing you hear about folks maybe trying to turn their oven on to heat. And again, yes, it works great for heating that small area inside the oven, but it's incredibly inefficient for trying to heat a room. So we would recommend that you not do that. Maybe if you're cold, put a sweater on and try to keep the doors and windows closed and avoid drafts and so forth.
Yeah, and not to mention the fire hazards. Some of those heating sources can be, if they're not used correctly. So maybe it's just best that you turn the heat up just a little bit if needed. Amy mentioned yesterday, just keep it at 68 degrees and dress really warm. That'll help you out. So great tips.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. And Brian, if you want to talk about some fire hazards in terms of, obviously having a space heater in your home, using your oven as a source of heat, what tips do you have before people start using external heating sources like that?
Yeah, space heaters, as I mentioned yesterday, just they're meant to be directly plugged into the wall. Do not use extension cords for space heaters. They draw too many watts and you'll overheat the cord. 36 inches minimum from any combustible source: couches, chairs, ottomans, things like that, curtains for sure. Also, any kerosene or gas powered equipment, please follow the instructions very carefully. designed to operate in ventilated areas. And one of the things that we see on occasion is using the wrong fuel and the wrong type space heater. And that is extremely dangerous and could even be explosive. So just follow the instructions on those and be extremely careful.
Awesome. Thank you. And it looks like we do need to cover a little bit of sledding safety today. I know how important that is. And if you'd like to elaborate on that, that'd be great.
Sure. I grew up in Michigan, and sledding blood was a badge of honor. That's just the way it was. But there are ways to enjoy it. Certainly, one of the things that we really want to discourage is the use of any type of motorized vehicle to pull a sled. While it looks like great fun, we've seen that tragic results as a result of that, even within the last year. So find a safe hill away from rivers, lakes, water sources, power poles, traffic for sure, things like that. We want this to be a time, and it's a rare event in Tennessee. We want this to be a time of fun and memory building, and not certainly tragedy. So. And also be careful of with the snow icing like it is. For small children, it can be just like falling on concrete when that sled tips over. So be extremely careful with that, and just monitor your area, not just the hill itself, but pay attention to your surroundings as well.
And you're right, Chief Goss. Diane has reminded us here, while we also want to make sure our kids are being safe, we need to remember those animals that are out there. Today is, I saw 15 degrees here at my thermometer here at home. And so this is definitely a day you do not want to leave your animals outside.
Yeah, any kind. I mean, it just takes a very short time for hypothermia to set in. So the wild animals are conditioned to it. Our family pets certainly are not. So be hyper aware of that.
All right. Very good. Well, we appreciate everyone and their time here today. I know that we have covered a lot of different topics here today with a lot of different people. And so we want to make sure that we thank everyone, and certainly hope everyone has a safe day as all the crews continue to work out there.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Stay safe.
Thank you all.
Thanks very much.